Hello, welcome to Fiberchats. My name is Irina. I'm the host of Fiberchats, and my guest today is Suzanne Bryan. Hi, Suzanne.
Hello.
So I must tell you, I'm just so honored that you are a guest of my channel. And you mentioned that you've never been interviewed.
Nope, this is the first time.
I
I'm on
can
the other end now.
I can't tell you how I'm excited about that. So let's talk about your knitting career before YouTube. Did you do the master knitting program before you started YouTube?
Yes, I joined YouTube just to watch other, things. So my join date, I think, says like 2007 or something. I don't know, but that's not when I started making videos. My first video was after or during the Master Hand Knitting program, or slightly after. And the first video is the one on the Italian cast on that you can use for double knitting or brioche, or as an invisible cast on, like the start of a tubular cast on. And the reason I made that video is because I was writing an article for Cast On Magazine, which is the magazine that TKGA subscribers get as part of their membership, on double knitting. And I start my double knitting with that cast on, and to try to write out the directions without a video so that someone could do that cast on is a very tricky thing to do. And I thought, well, if I could just make a video, that would be so much easier. So I contacted the, TKGA and asked if I could include a video with my article, and they said yes. So that was the very first video that I made, and it was scary. I didn't know how it was going to turn out, and I did it in one shot, just from beginning to end, no
Right.
editing. I had no idea how to edit a video. I had no editing software. All I could do was just take a little movie using my phone. I used my phone, which I still use. I still use my phone for all my videos, and make a one-time through. And it's turned out to be a very popular video. My videos have improved since then. That one, when I go back and look at it, I've come a long way since then.
Right. Well, when you did that first video and you first posted it, what was the immediate reaction then? Not like over the 9 years that this video exists there, but like the first, let's say, few weeks. Were there views on that video?
There were some views, and I would have to go back. I could actually share my screen with you if you wanted to. I could show you. But at one point, someone somewhere shared it. The thing is, if people share your videos and they share it somewhere where people will actually click on it and watch it, suddenly you start getting views. I didn't go back and look at it for a long time because I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't even understand YouTube. I just posted a video. And then, so I didn't watch it. I didn't watch to see how many people were watching it or the reaction or anything. And then one day I looked at it and there was like all these views. And I thought, I can make videos.
Right.
This works. People are interested. And that's what got me interested in making videos. It was by sheer accident, sheer accident.
Right. Well, let's go back a little bit further. How did you discover the Knitting Guild Association for yourself?
That's very interesting. I saw an ad for it in Interweave Knits when the Knitting Guild Association was going to have a conference in San Diego. And it was probably like in 2006 or 2005 or even earlier. I had never even heard of the Knitting Guild Association. I'd never heard of it. And a friend of mine who is an avid quilter would go to quilt shows, and she saw this. She goes, "You should go to that." Well, by the time I went back to try to find it, I couldn't find which magazine it was in, and it was long gone. But I kept talking about it, and I don't know if they had an online. I wasn't into the internet and any of that. I was just in my magazine, but I kept talking about it. And then I heard somewhere that they had a master hand knitting program. And my daughter actually bought me level 1 of the master hand knitting program for Christmas in December of 2007. And that's how I really found out about it. And I will tell you, it changed my life. It literally changed my life.
So there's 3 levels to it, 3 tiers. Did you have a favorite?
Yes, level 3. Level 3, you have to go through the pain and agony of level 1 and 2 to get to level 3. When you get to level 3, it's like the icing on the cake. You get to do all the fun stuff. You get to do all the fun stitches, double knitting, brioche, traveling stitches, duplicate stitch, mosaic knitting, all of that stuff. And each one of those was new to me.
Right.
New to me. And so each one I studied. I jumped in with both feet into the ocean of knitting knowledge, and I studied each one. I ended up writing an article on double knitting. I wrote an article on mosaic knitting. I wrote an article on stranded knitting. Each one I took the opportunity to study. I didn't just do the bare minimum of what you needed to do, the knit, the swatch. I just dove in and totally immersed myself in learning.
So what kind of knitter were you prior to that?
I thought I was an excellent knitter, but I was not. In fact, I have a sweater, and if you wanted me to go get it, I could, that could show you my knitting.
Let's do it.
Let me go get it, okay? This is a sweater, and I knitted this based upon that book, The Sweater Workshop, by Jacqueline Fee. Is that her name, Jacqueline? I have it here somewhere, but it's not right in front of me. The Sweater Workshop, so it's a raglan. And when I knitted this, I only knew how to 1 decrease, knit 2 together. And I only knew 1 increase, knit front back. Those are the only ones I knew.
Right.
And I didn't know that you should place them strategically. So in wrap and turns, I'd never heard of a wrap and turn. I didn't know that you picked up the wrap and concealed it when you came back to it. So in the yoke, where there's a lot of wrap and turns, you can see every single one of them. And where I have my knit front and backs, I just randomly place them. Like in the, this is knit from the bottom up. So the sleeve increases, they're all over the sleeve. They're not along the underline part. And I knew no different. And it's still one of my favorite sweaters. I love it. And why I chose that yarn, it was probably the most expensive yarn I'd ever bought in my life. Before that, I'm going to segue. When I first learned to knit, I was younger, a kid. But when I first started buying my own yarn, I was probably in my 20s, and I didn't have very much income for hobbies. So I had 1 set of knitting needles, size 10, straights, 14-inch knitting needles. So all of the yarn I bought had to go on the US 10 needles. I only knit projects because I thought I can't afford another pair of needles. And so for a long time, everything I knit was on a US 10 needle. Now I have needles coming out my ears, I have every size, every shape, but anyway, so when I knitted this, that's kind of where I was. I knew how to make a knit stitch, a purl stitch, knit front back, and knit 2 together. And doing the short rows was brand new for me. And I knew how to cast on and wind off, and that's it. And I made up a sweater.
Well, I must tell you, I feel like I have a project where I jumped like this into Shetland lace. Monique Boomstra, a Passion for Lace, designer from A Passion for Lace. I saw her account on Instagram and I thought, oh my God, this is so beautiful. And I said, what is it? And she said, oh, this is Shetland lace. So me being curious, I went to my local library and I said, what do you have on Shetland lace? And they had 1 book by Elizabeth Lovick, The Magic of Shetland Lace. So I got that book, and on the cover there is a stole with the heart. And I was like, oh, that's so pretty, let me knit that. Without realizing that it's probably like one of the most difficult patterns in that book, and that lace is probably like one of the most difficult laces on the planet, I just jumped in and I knitted myself a stole. Then I tried to block it and the thing was like 3 meters long and I was like totally panicking. And then the girls from Fine Shetland Lace group told me the tricks of how to keep the heart shape, but like made it so much wider so the length goes a little shorter so it's still wearable. And it's like it's a mess. It's from thicker yarn. I can see all my mistakes. I love that shawl. It's
Yes,
still one
I
of
love
my favorites.
this sweater is my
Right.
favorite sweater. And because it's silk and cotton, when I wear it, it stretches out. The sleeves get longer and longer and the body gets longer. And then I throw it in the washer and dryer. Believe it or not, I throw this in the washer and the dryer, it shrinks back up and I wear it until it's too big again.
Right.
I never, ever heard of blocking before I did the Master Hand Knitting program. I never blocked anything.
Right. So let's go like even further back. So you are a child. Who taught you how to knit? How did you learn?
When I was in kindergarten and my mother went back to work, my next door neighbor babysat me after school and she taught me how to crochet. And so I would crochet these long chains, you know, and then I learned how to crochet those things that you put over toilet paper, you know, those little dolls you put, she taught me how to do that. And nobody in my family knitted or crocheted. My grandmother, my father's mother, had this gorgeous garter stitch, big, huge wool throw that her cousin had knit for her that she kept on her couch. And that was my favorite thing of all time. Whenever I was at my grandmother's house, I would cuddle up in that. And that's what made me want to learn how to knit. And I taught myself from books, from pictures. And because I learned how to crochet first, I just automatically held the yarn in my left hand. I didn't even know that you could hold it in your right hand. So
Right.
I'm a continental knitter. I just
You know what?
immediately.
I find it so interesting. You are the third person who tells me that they're continental knitters because they learn from books.
Right.
Because they like never knew that it was, or the other method just seems strange in the
Right.
pictures of the books. So it's very
Right.
interesting.
And then nobody in my family knitted. And I used to tell people before TKGA and the Master Hand Knitting program, I was a closet knitter, you know, because if you're in a family of people and no one else does that, you're strange.
Right.
You're strange. You're considered unsocial. Because if they were all watching television and I was knitting, I wasn't participating. But little did they know you can watch television and knit at the same time.
And it's more
You know?
productive that way.
Exactly.
Because
Exactly.
at the end, they just watch the show and have a
I
song.
used to, my mother-in-law's house, she didn't have any bright lamps in her living room. So when I went there in my knitting bag, I took my own light bulb. And when I would switch out the light bulb in the lamp that I would sit by so that I could see my knitting.
Right. So when you discovered that program and you started it, did you feel like you were struggling at the beginning with like all the swatches that you have to make? Was it like really difficult?
No, to me, it was an adventure. And I worked full time and I'm retired now, thank goodness. The light at the end of the tunnel finally came, you know. But I worked as a physician's assistant and I worked in an urgent care or emergency room settings. And so I worked 12-hour shifts. And my profession required that I do research constantly. My whole professional life, I was constantly reading medical journals and keeping up. So you learn to do research just as second nature. So when I got that, the directions for level 1, it was like a roadmap for me. I just started out at the beginning and I just did it exactly as it described. And it was frightening though. After I had all the swatches done and wrote the article, did the research, answered the questions and all of that, I kept looking at my swatches. And this was before the TKGA group on Ravelry. Ravelry was not quite started yet.
Right.
And so I didn't know where to look for what my swatches should look like. I had no idea. So I laid them all out on my kitchen counter and I literally got a magnifying glass out and I was looking at them to make sure they were clean, that there was no dog hair on them, you know, and my daughter finally said to me, she said, "Mom, just put them in the box and send it in. Stop that." Because I would reknit them. I would reknit them over and over and over. And I did send them in. And the things that you think that they're going to pick on, they don't. You don't know. You don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And so they'll see what they think you need to work on. And I had to redo a couple of my swatches. where when I did my knit two togethers, there was a space between the stitch before and my knit two together. So I needed to snug up the yarn and I needed to improve my blocking and my questions were too brief. My answers to the questions were too brief. I'd say yes, you know, and they said, can you expand on that a little bit? So it took me, level one was a learning experience. By the time I got through it and then started level two, Ravelry had started. And I found the TKGA group in Ravelry. And I eventually became the administrator of that group. I'm not anymore because I retired from the committee, but I learned so much from that. And then I just went through, it took me like 3 years to go through from level one through level three. And then I got a wonderful phone call from Miranda, and she invited me to be on the Master Hand Knitting Review Committee. And that was like huge, huge to me. And I was on the committee for several years and became a co-chair where I wrote the letter to the student. And I learned so much by reviewing people's knitting. Unbelievable how much I learned.
Do you feel like you learn more from actually knitting and going through the program, or from reviewing other people's work?
From reviewing other people's.
Right.
And writing articles, because when I would write the articles for Cast On magazine, I would do research. And I'm one of those people that I love research.
Right.
So to me, that means get out every single book I own and look up and see if anything's in there written about the topic and, putting all that stuff together. I also, one of the things I love about Cast On magazine is at the end of the technical articles, there's usually a reference list. And I'll read the article and then I look up every single one of those references if I have them, and I have most of them, and I'll read the article that they used as a reference.
Right.
So it's like this endless, and then there's more articles, and that's really how you learn. And then looking at people's knitting and teaching people how to knit and seeing how their brains work.
So I asked the same question the other ladies that finished this program, Heather Storta and Donna Astin, whom I interviewed recently. After you're done with the program, you got your certification, did you feel like you were overly critical of your work?
No. What I learned, first of all, when you finish the program, you go through withdrawals. It's like reading a really, really good book or a series of books, and you come to the end and you feel lost for a little while until you find another series of books to read. Right. It was like that because I had worked on it so intently for so long. And I didn't knit anything else during that time, but I did continue buying yarn. That's when my stash kind of mushroomed, because I kept buying yarn at the same rate, but I was only knitting swatches for the program. Right. But I didn't feel overly critical. And even going back and looking at stuff like this sweater, I don't feel critical. I can just see how far I've come. And I'm still learning. I learn every day. I'm still learning. I learn new things all the time. And I'll tell you, you would not believe this, but really I'm an introvert and a wallflower. But when it comes to knitting, I could talk about it all day long, every day with anybody.
Right.
It's like the magic button that you press and it like opens up the world for you,
Did you meet a lot of people that way through knitting? Like, do you consider people that you met through knitting to be your best friends? Or do you have like people who you consider your best friends who have nothing to do with knitting? Like who do you gravitate toward more?
All of my best friends right now, most of my best friends right now are knitters. And it's because you can talk the same language. In fact, I have a group of friends that, because I teach these classes and I started teaching them locally, it's called boot camp. I started teaching them locally at our junior college quite a few years ago. And the very first class, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I just, they asked me if I wanted to teach courses and I said, sure. So I created this course and it filled up. The class was full. And I went, and there are all these people who have never held knitting needles before in their life. And I taught them how to cast on and how to make a knit stitch in the first 2 hours of the class. My friend Jackie, before class starts, she goes, Suzanne, do you think you might want some help? I go, oh no, I got it. And she goes, well, I'm going to come just in case. So she went with me. And she helped me, because we're going around one-on-one, showing people how to put the yarn and figure out, do they want to hold it in their right hand or left hand? Because I don't force anybody. It's whatever they gravitate towards. That's what I go with the flow. And so showing people how to knit throwing and continental, and how to cast on. And when we were leaving the classroom and walking out to the car, she goes, oh my God, what did we get ourselves into? And it was that way again on the second week. The second week, I taught them how to bind off and how to purl. But by the third week, they were all knitting. They were all making knit stitches and purl stitches and casting on and binding off. And those people stuck with me through every course. And then every semester, I would add another course. By the time I finished, I was teaching 4 knitting classes a week at our junior college. Those have now morphed into my online boot camp classes. And so I have taught hundreds and hundreds of people how to knit.
So did you get it down now? Like, you coming and you like right away know the fastest way to teach how to knit, like no.
Yes, I've learned methods. And like I said a while ago, you learn how people's brains work. So I use several things. I have written directions. I have my videos. That's when I really started making videos, was for my classes, for my students to watch. Mm-hmm. And then I do hands-on during class and then hands-on with them. So one of those ways is going to get through to their brain. Some people like written directions, some people like visual, some people need hands-on. And so I learned, and I can tell pretty much when I first meet a person what they're going to need. And being in the medical field really was a big, huge, and working in an urgent care emergency room, because every door that you open, it's a new person that you've never met before, and you have to be able to assess the situation pretty quickly. It's the same way with teaching somebody how to knit. You need to be able to assess where are they coming from, because I can't force them to knit like me.
Right.
I have to teach them to knit how they knit. And there are some people who pick it up like that. And I tell them, I say, you've always been a knitter. You just never got to try it before.
Right. I have a question.
You were probably always a knitter.
I probably was. I have a question. So yesterday, I actually won this class with Vogue Knitting Live at the giveaway on Instagram with a lady that I interviewed previously, Padma R. She's the Tunisian crochet designer. And I've never done Tunisian crochet, and I haven't done much crochet either. Like, I mean, I know how to do like a couple of amigurumi toys, but like that's about it. Like I cannot read the crochet chart for the life of me. So I got into this class and I was like, well, I know nothing about Tunisian crochet. Let me try, like what can possibly go wrong? So there was 20 people in that class, and I got it like this. It was so easy. It just felt so natural. Like she would say one time, while she was showing one row, I was already doing 4. It just felt like very organic, right? And then there was one lady who had tremendous trouble with that. She said, the only thing I know in crochet is how to make a chain, which is pretty much the only thing I knew. And she is a knitter, but she was struggling. She couldn't keep up. She felt the pace was way too fast. And again, at the same time, I was doing 4 times faster than the instructor, right? So, and like the rest of the class seemed to be able to keep up. It wasn't like a common complaint. And so the instructor was sort of torn, because she was, on one hand, she wanted to help this lady to get everything we were doing. On the other hand, it's only 2-hour class, and the class had to stop on time because somebody else had another class after that. So she couldn't like really spend all the time showing it again and again, because she had like so much material to cover. Do you have the same frustration when you teach and like somebody gets it right away and other people just like frustrated and don't get it? Like, how do you deal with that?
That's one of the reasons that I have my YouTube videos. So if I'm teaching a class, in all of the classes that I teach, I have detailed YouTube videos for every little element of the class. And I'll say, you need to go home and watch that video, just you and the video without any outside distractions. And as a last recourse, and I do this actually quite a bit, I do one-on-one Zooms with people. Sometimes they just need one-on-one because as an example, I have a really good friend who I first went to college with, who was very, very bright, but she had test anxiety. And we would study together and she would know the information inside and out, upside down and backwards, and she would not do well on the test. And that was so, so frustrating for her. There are people like that who, when they're in a classroom setting, they don't get it. They can't get it just because of the distractions around them in the class. And so those people really benefit. And all I have to do is Zoom with them one time usually, and they get it. And then once they got it, they lose that anxiety during class and they do much better in the classroom setting. I'm really I want people to get it. I'm more interested in them getting it than I am in making money from them getting it.
Right.
So I love knitting and I want other people to love it too. And I don't want them to feel frustrated.
So out of all those hundreds of classes that you taught, did anybody come back, show you something, and you were just stunned at the progress that they make?
Yes. Yeah. That happens a lot and it warms your heart. It warms your heart. It makes you feel, oh my goodness, it's like your grandchild excelling in sports or something, you know. I have quite a few friends now who their knitting has just improved so immensely. I have a good friend now, she just finished a sweater and she just bound it off and wove in the ends and it fits her perfectly and it looks so comfortable and she loves it. And, you know, that's worth it right there. The joy that it brings her brings me joy.
So you have all those videos and they usually like very methodical, detailed, showing how to do certain technique. Do you ever get negative reaction from people on those videos?
Not very often. Not very often. I have over 400 videos, and I would say all of these years, I've only had maybe less than 10 negative comments on my videos. And I think what bothers me more, and it shouldn't bother me, I shouldn't let it bother me, is when somebody gives me a thumbs down on my video, because I don't know why. If they leave a comment, at least I know what they're unhappy about.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? But
it was absolutely kills
an anonymous right. Thumbs down. That's like, well, what was it they didn't like? Because I want to improve. You know, I want it to be more ideal, you know, for everybody. And if they just give you a thumbs down and they don't tell you why, that's not very helpful.
Right. No, it's funny. I had this discussion with one of another YouTubers, Caleb from Drowning in Yarn. And I said, you know, like when I saw my first thumb down, it's like really killed me because I was like, I hope it's because of the Zoom connection was bad, that the audio quality wasn't
right.
good, but like, I wish you told me like what went wrong, like why you disliked it, right? And he said, well, I don't think people dislike it. It's just sort of like they don't care for your content. So I don't know, like...
I don't know. It's like, why give a thumbs down? Just look at the next video. You just move on, you know, ignore it. But I get lots of thumbs up and I really don't get very many thumbs down. Usually it's like 1% or 2% of the views might be, or none. A lot of times my videos have 100% thumbs up, but still it's those, you know, it's those few that you're just wondering, what was it that they didn't like, you know?
How do you come up with the ideas for those videos? Are they always based on like what you're teaching or what you're knitting, or sometimes people suggest them? How does it work?
It's usually, a lot of times it'll be with something that I'm teaching or questions that I'm teaching when I'm teaching live in class. For example, I have several videos that are in process right now, and let me show you. So I just did one on different textures for heel flaps. Okay, in one color. And I have another one in process that's different textures for heel flaps. in 2 colors.
Mm-hmm.
It needs to be blocked, but, and then I have one this one's really cool. I just did one on Eye of Partridge in 1 color and in 2 colors. It's very pretty in 2 colors. And then in the round. And I don't think there's another YouTube video with I don't think there are any with 2 color. I looked, I haven't found any YouTube videos with Eye of Partridge 2 color. I know for sure there's none in the round. If someone finds one, please let me know. I would like to see it. So I've always been interested, but I'm teaching a sock class right now. So that was for but I've always been interested in Eye of Partridge because it's really hard to find any information on 2 color Eye of Partridge. And 2 color Eye of Partridge is kind of a combination between stranded knitting and slip stitch knitting because you use both techniques. But then I'm going to do one. So then I think, okay, so how do you pick up stitches from the edge? So I'm going to make up a video. I'm going to make a video on heel flaps of different ways to do the edge of the heel flap. You know, you could do a slip stitch edge, or this is a garter stitch edge, and you can do 2 or 3 stitches in. You know, you can do a wider selvage. The selvage doesn't have to be 1 stitch. It can be 2 or 3 stitches.
Right.
And how would you pick up stitches from that? So I'm going to show how to pick up stitches so you don't have gaps in your gusset. So that's another video. And then I have people give suggestions. So I keep a spreadsheet. I actually have a spreadsheet of video ideas. And I move them up and I rank them, I move them around. And so when I'm going to make a new video, if I don't have something immediately on my mind that I already want to work on, I'll go to my spreadsheet and pick a topic. And I'm not one of those people that has a regimen. I don't make a video twice a week, every week on certain days. I have to be inspired. I have to feel like I want to make the video, and then they just come out just like that. Right. If I'm having a hard time making the video, like I stutter a lot, or I use the wrong word, I say left instead of right, or, you know, and that happens a lot. And when you're saying it, you don't realize you're saying it. And then, you know, you're editing and then you see, oh my God, I said left instead of right. Or I said purl instead of knit, you know, and then you got to go back. When I start seeing a lot of issues like that, I say, that's not a good day to make a video. Right. We need to just cut that one off, start over on a different day when I'm like, you know, ready to spit out the right words.
I have another question. So I've been talking a lot about that with my friends on Instagram. So I designed my very first shawl, or at least I think I designed my very first shawl. So that's the question, right? It's basically like a very simple triangular shawl, stockinette stitch. And then I put an edging of the mesh that I saw, like I've done another scarf with that mesh. So I used that mesh for that edging. And then I did the border of leaves that I've seen somewhere on YouTube. And I was like, oh, that's so pretty. And it's fall. It's going to look so brilliant. And so I calculated how many repeats I need.
That is your original design.
Right. But like, so you have all this videos of like different heel flaps, different techniques, how to pick it up. So if person comes to your YouTube channel and uses your videos and just does the little, like, I'll take this technique and this technique and this technique and put it together, does that make it into their design in your view?
I think so. You know, from what I've been told, if you know, all the things that are in stitch dictionaries and stuff are available to use. There's really, like my friend Arenda says, there's nothing new in knitting. You know, it's just being presented differently. I think so, but I think, you know, YouTube now allows you to sample from other people's videos, and I haven't really looked into that to see how it's done. I've had 3 people sample from my videos, but really it still points back to my YouTube channel. And as long as I get credit, it's okay with me. And I've had a lot of people ask to use my videos in their patterns to show the technique. That's okay with me. That's okay with me, because that's why I make the videos. But if somebody, I have had somebody, like my video on closing the underarm holes. I created that technique. I created that. I took me years of trying all different kinds of techniques. And I'm the first person to make a video on that. And I didn't copy anybody else's video. It was, and I questioned a lot of people. I really did a lot of research, read all my books on how, and I tried many different methods of closing the holes at the underarms. And this one works really nice. It's clean and tidy. It looks really good. And then I saw another video that was exactly like mine, made like 4 or 5 years after mine, word for word, almost like mine.
Right.
And there's nothing I can do about that. Nothing I can do about that. So it was annoying. It was annoying because they could have said, I saw this here, or,
Right.
I try not to, I might inadvertently show something that someone else showed, but I rarely watch other people's YouTube videos on knitting. I'll watch YouTube videos because I like to watch about other things, but I
Right.
don't want to be influenced by someone else. And I do not want to steal their techniques. I don't want to even subconsciously steal it. So everything that I show is my way of showing it. And it comes from me. Now, it might turn out that I'm showing something that someone else showed and it's very, very similar. But I didn't copy them. If I had looked at their video, I would say, you can also see this on such and such. I would give credit.
Right. Do you feel like there is room for other people to come to YouTube and show the same thing you do in their own way, like to do
Yes,
more technique videos? So do you feel like
yes.
it's over, like there's too
No,
much
it's good
saturation?
because I get a lot of people who watch my videos and they'll say, well, I watched a lot of videos, but I just got it by watching yours. Sometimes you have to watch multiple videos on the same thing. So that's okay. I don't have any problem with that,
Right.
And some people, what I try to do on my YouTube channel, even though you'd never know it because I'm talking so much now, but I try to cut back on the chit chat and go straight to the technique. That's my angle is when I'm going and I want to learn something new, I don't want to socialize first. I just want to learn the new thing.
Right.
And so that's what I try to do on my videos. I'm going to show you how to do this. This is how you do it. This is why you would want to do it. And this is how you would fix the mistake if you make a mistake. And you wouldn't want to do it this way,
Right. So now that you're teaching so much, right, and you were involved with the guild a lot, how do you find time to knit what you feel like?
I'm fortunate in that the way that I manage that is my boot camp classes, I've been teaching them for so long that all of the written materials are really good. And my videos are all made. Sometimes I tweak it a little bit here or there. So I don't have to work very much hard on those. I just have to teach the class, which I do via Zoom. So that's, a few hours a week where I'm live. And then I review everyone's homework. So that takes me a few hours. And give them comments on their homework. Yes, it does cut into my personal knitting time. But another thing that happens when you've been knitting for a long, long time, I have drawers and drawers and drawers full of sweaters that I've knit. And I've knit sweaters for my son-in-law, my daughter, my son, my daughter-in-law, my grandchildren. I've knit socks, a million socks. You can only store so many knitted items.
Right.
And so it becomes the learning process. I enjoy learning, and I really like swatching and learning new techniques. So making the videos or creating the classes or creating new tutorials is really kind of my hobby. I enjoy doing that. I still do personal knitting. I'm knitting a sweater. I don't have it in here right now that I'm working on the neck right now. And I always have a sweater. I have 2 sweaters on my needles right now. I always have sweaters on my needles. I always have socks. I probably finish about 5 sweaters a year. But, after knitting for 20 or 30 years, that's a lot of sweaters.
Right.
I'd have a huge stash, so I need to live a long time.
Well, I hope you do. We expect much more videos from you. Let me ask you this. Do you ever sell your finished items? Have you ever tried selling them?
No. My starry night socks are really pretty. And I've had people ask me if I would knit them a pair, and I'd say for about $1,500. I'd knit you a pair. That
Right.
kind of nips it in the bud right there. I had one lady at work one time, she wanted me to knit her son, her grown son, who was like 6'4", some knee-high socks to wear under his boots. I said no. It was real easy. No.
Do you find it hard to say no to people when all kinds of requests coming your way?
Yes, I do. Uh, but I do enjoy helping people knit. We locally here before COVID, we would get together twice a week, a bunch of knitters in Bakersfield, quite a few of us. And usually, and there was always an empty seat next to me that was called the hot seat. So if you had a question for Suzanne, that was your seat. And people would just rotate in and out of that seat because they had questions, and I would help them knit. Although I've had people, and I don't mind helping somebody learn a stitch or do this, but I've had people ask me to help them design a sweater. I will not do that. They can take my classes. I'm not going to do that for free.
Right.
That's a bit much. And I've written so many tutorials on how to design a sweater that they can buy the tutorial, and so some people do step over that line, that boundary.
Do you ever feel like it's too much pressure to always be the expert?
Sometimes, but I don't ever worry about that. And I don't feel like I'm the expert, although I feel like I know a lot about knitting. And I know more than most of my friends do. But I don't feel like I'm the expert. I feel more like a teacher.
Do you feel like people expect you to be an expert? Just because of your reputation, just because you have the YouTube channel where you teach, just because you teach?
But I don't know everything, and there's still a lot to learn. So I think that my profession, being a physician's assistant, really helps me with that, because people, when I was a physician, they'd say, why didn't you finish medical school? Well, I never went to medical school. I'm a PA. It's not like I stopped halfway. And one of the things about being a physician's assistant or a nurse practitioner is that you have to have a supervising physician, or you work with a supervising physician. So, which is a backup system for you, which is really cool, because if you walk into a room with a patient and you don't know the answer, you can walk back out and ask your supervising physician for the answer. So you don't feel like you have to know everything, and you don't feel belittled because you don't know everything. And I'm that way with the knitting. If I don't know the answer, I know where I can get the answer. So I ask people, like I ask Arinda, my friend Arinda, I'll ask Arinda, have you seen this anywhere? Or I have another friend, Binka, who's a master knitter. I'll ask Binka, I'll say, have you seen this anywhere? Where have you seen this? I need to learn more about this. And so I ask. So I don't feel, if somebody asks me a question, I'll say, I don't know, but let me, I can point you in the direction where you can find the answer, which is the best thing to do.
Right.
Or let me see if I can find the answer.
Do you feel like there is a competitive spirit between the master knitters? Because there are quite a few, there's not a whole bunch, but there are quite a few. Do you feel like there is competition for like the place under the sun between them?
No, there's absolutely no competition whatsoever. And it's a camaraderie instead. It's like, the track and field is a wonderful sport. Track and field is one of those sports where, let's say somebody's running the 400-meter race, and there's 7 or 8 people on the track. At the end of they're each running individually or for their school, or, but they're not a group. They're not a team, right? Each person's individual. At the end of the race, they congratulate each other. Track and field's awesome for that, because they all know that the work each one of them went through to get to where they are, and they high five each other, they congratulate each other. The Master Hand Knitting program is that way. It's
Do
a
you think it's
camaraderie.
that way by design of the program, or do you think it's just the type of people that it attracts?
The type of people it attracts. Yeah, they don't design it that way. It's strictly an educational program. Right. But I think, maybe inherently the design, because of having a mentor, because it's a mentorship down.
Right.
And that kind of creates the camaraderie. And it's a sharing of information or sharing of sources of information.
Right.
And so they set the example. Another good example is there is a local, in another city, but very close, a spinning and weaving guild. And they've been in existence like 70 years. But once a year, they have a show where they sell their things. So they do not share tips with each other because they need to have their piece be a little bit different to get a buyer. In our knitting guild, some people asked us in the beginning, should we have a show to sell anything? I said, no, because that creates competition and we don't want competition. We want a sharing environment.
Right. So when you don't knit, are there other sides to Suzanne Bryan that nobody knows about? Do you have other hobbies, other interests, other passions?
I like to garden. I like to read. I'm really a loner, like I said before. I really enjoy being by myself, although I love people. But I'm one of those people that I can entertain myself all day long in my own house and be totally happy and not feel lonely. And I can go from day to day and do that because I have everything at my fingertips of what I need. I have my yard, I have my books, I have my knitting, I have a big stash. And in this day and age, you can Zoom with people or text people and stay in touch with them. Although I miss the COVID thing, it's been really hard because I really miss the knitting conferences like Stitches and stuff like that. I miss those so much because that's where you get to see those people once a year or twice a year. And you know, Stitches is online they're going to be this year in Sacramento I think it's going to be in March, and I can hardly wait to go and see my knitting friends that I don't get to see very often.
Do you teach at those conferences?
I don't teach at those conferences. And I do take classes if there's new things that I haven't taken before, but I've taken most of the classes. But I really go to see the marketplace and to see my friends and just to hobnob.
So when you go into the marketplace, do you have a strategy how you buy, or you go and you're like, oh my God, so pretty, you're coming home with me? How does it work with you?
I used to have a strategy. I used to say, okay, I'm going to go to this place. And then, you know, I'd look at the map and see where the vendors are. And I'd go to the vendors that I wanted to see first. But that was before my stash was so big. I don't need so much yarn anymore. So I really just wander around and look and see if anything calls to me, you know, and I look at different things. Like I really like unique scissors. So I'll look for little unique, you know, haberdashery type places and or knitting needles. But I've got plenty of knitting needles, knitting bags. You know, you can only collect so many things.
Right.
But I just wander around and I talk to people and I look and see if there's new things, you know, just to educate myself.
When you wander through the stalls, do you ever like stop and just admire people wearing their knitting?
Oh, yes.
Like, oh my God, I have to make that.
I don't ever feel like I have to make it, but I do admire people's work. And I always tell them, I say, that is so beautiful. I really try to, because I know I have worn things that I thought were really beautiful and not have one single person say anything to me.
Right.
And I've even walked into knitting stores with really nice sweaters that I've hand knit and no one says anything. And it's like, do they not realize that it's hand knit or, you know? So I really go out of my way to do that little act of kindness and say, your sweater is gorgeous. And I never, ever point out mistakes to people, never point out mistakes to them.
I feel like it's sort of like that thing really bothers me, like what you just said, because, and I feel like I've been talking a lot about it lately. I feel like we're missing that sense of community, that sense of support, that, you know, let us all grow together. Like, let's inspire each other, let's support each other, you know. So a lot of groups on Facebook would have all these stringent rules that you cannot show your patterns, you cannot say it's your pattern, you cannot put links to your pattern, you cannot show the yarn you dye. And I understand that, like, you don't want every group to be turned into a marketplace, but on the other hand, I feel like, how else these designers gonna make name for themselves? How else we gonna know about these yarn dyers, especially now during COVID, you know?
Right.
And I feel like that's the same thing. Like if we see other people's knitting and we don't comment on that, if we see other people's YouTube channel and we don't comment on that, like we don't support them. We're ruining that sense of community for each other. And I feel like we all benefit from it. There's not a single person in the knitting community who does not benefit from community spirit.
Right, exactly. We're all in this together.
Right.
And there's plenty of us, you know. And I do in my group on Facebook, my Knitting with Suzanne Bryan, I do not let people post patterns without my prior approval. They have to have my approval. And I have an administrator for that group, Margot, who's awesome. I couldn't do with the group without her. She's just phenomenal. And she understands my mindset and stuff. You have to, because I don't want my group to turn into a marketplace, but I understand what you're saying. And it's making me think that maybe I need to have one day a week where people can share patterns and share their own personal work, other than
you know what, I was interviewing this designer. Actually, her interview is gonna come out soon, and she was complaining how like sometimes she's trying really hard to promote herself on Instagram, but then she was sick for over a year. She was dealing with cancer treatment, and she's like, I just posted this new pattern and there's like zero reaction. It's just like crickets, because people basically forgot, because I wasn't constantly promoting it.
All stopped rolling, and she's trying
Right.
to get it rolling again.
Right.
Very, very hard. I like what you're saying, and I'm going to take it to heart. And I think that's something that I can change in my group on Facebook.
Right.
Because I understand, because I'm the same way. I have and participate in a lot of groups in Facebook for knitting, and somebody will ask a question. They'll say, how do you close those holes at the underarm? So I'll post my video and somebody deletes it because I'm promoting myself, but
Right.
it's a really good video on how to close the holes at the underarm.
No, I had the same thing with like I'm members of the Fair Isle group, and I was interviewing Hazel Tyndall. And I mean, if Hazel Tyndall's video doesn't go to Fair Isle group, where else would it go?
Right,
It's like it belongs there. But I wrote to administrators and they were actually very nice about it. And they said, well, we'll allow it to you once. We don't want your videos there again, but as an exception, we'll allow it to you. But I appreciate that, because it's like at least they were reasonable about it.
Right. And where else are you going to post that video?
Right.
In a group where people would want to watch it.
The reality of it, yes, of course, I wanted people to know about my channel and see other people I interview, but I didn't interview them just for my ego. I interviewed them because I thought those people need to be heard.
Because you want to share it.
Right.
Exactly. That's why I make videos. It's like, I don't make a video on how to do these sock heel flaps for my own benefit. I already know how to do that.
Right.
It's to share it because it's an awesome technique. And I haven't seen this on a YouTube video. And I can't say all of my videos are unseen stuff because, as I said before, there's not much new in knitting. It's just somebody regurgitating it or stating it in a different way. But it's sharing. It's sharing.
Right.
Because I certainly don't get rich from my YouTube channel. I'm in a tangent a little bit. The one that gets me is people are better about it now because they understand more. But people used to say, why do you have ads on your YouTube channel? I said, because I make like 1/10 of a cent for each person that watches that video if there's an ad, but it does add up, over time. And I'm giving it to you for free information. It doesn't cost you anything other than a few seconds of watching that ad, and you can push skip ad if you want to.
Right.
So those people.
But it's not only that, but you spend a lot of time researching the thing, filming it. I'm not even gonna talk about editing because I just discovered editing for myself. And let me tell you, my first 15 minutes video took me like 7 hours to edit before I realized how to edit, So it's all like all the time and effort that you put into it.
Exactly. And the years of experience built up before that. Right. It's and so they can watch the ad. They can watch that.
And that's funny because after I, let's say, designed my first shawl, right? Now I'm like, okay, if I were to sell it, right, I have to start writing down the pattern. I have no idea how to write down the pattern, so I'll have to figure out what software to use. I mean, I have a lot of friends designers, so they can guide me through and advise me, but it's a whole process, right? And then, okay, like I took couple notes, but I didn't really plan to turn it into a design, so I'll have to re-knit it probably.
Yes, you have to reknit it.
Right. And then I have to test it, and then I have to take better pictures, and then I have to start with the whole Ravelry thing. And I was like, oh my God. And then at the end of it, what, 3 shawls gonna sell, you know? So it's like you can look at it and say, well, those designers charge so much money for a pattern, but people don't understand how much work goes into every single design.
Exactly. So let's say you turn around and sell it for $8, the pattern for $8. And then Ravelry is going to take their chunk.
Right.
And
And
then
PayPal.
PayPal takes their chunk. So you might end up with $5 from that pattern or $6 from that pattern. And then you have to pay taxes on it.
Right.
So it's a very minuscule amount that you end up making, but you can, if people buy the pattern, and I really think that people sharing your work is the key to getting it, but getting people to share your work is not easy. But once people do start sharing it, then it kind of snowballs a little bit, but it takes time.
I find it the same with like YouTube. Like people, like there are people who would share your videos, right, and be happy to tell other people about this wonderful source where you can go and find all these techniques and like learn about all these things. And then there are people who feel like they must have keep it for themselves because they don't want anybody else to know about it, you know? So I'm like, share, buy this pattern. If you have money to buy extra skein of yarn, buy extra skein of yarn. Tell other people about it. You know, that was like the whole idea of me starting this channel because I wanted people to meet all these wonderful artists and to know that like they all going through these struggles and they all go through the uncertainty and all this work. It's not that
Yes.
easy, you know, it's not that obvious.
And people do it. It is work. It's a lot of work, but you do it because you love doing it. But still, that doesn't mean you should be giving it away for free,
Right.
you know? And um, knitting has a value to it. It does have a value. It is not free, and it is very undervalued, very, very undervalued.
You know what I found the most amusing? When a friend of mine decided to give me yarn, she knew that I was into knitting, so she decided to give me a basket of yarn for my birthday. And she went to the local yarn store and had a sticker shock there because they explained her that each skein was like 25, 27, $28. So the basket wasn't filling as fast as, as she
Right.
planned.
But what I tell people, and this is why I tell my students, because a lot of time when I start with boot camp, when these people have not knit before, and they have no idea what they're getting into because if they fall in love with it, and I give them very nice yarn for the classes. I give them 100% merino worsted weight yarn because, the biggest part of knitting is the sensation of the yarn going through your fingers. It's a tactile thing. So I get them spoiled right from the beginning, but then they'll go to the yarn store and they'll say, oh my God, $25 for a skein of yarn. And I say, but think about this. If you buy, let's say you buy 2 skeins of yarn and you're going to make a scarf. Okay, two skeins of worsted weight yarn. It's probably going to cost you $50 or more of merino wool. And but how many hours is it going to take you to knit that scarf? For a beginning knitter, it might take them 40 or 50 or 60 hours. So that's $1 an hour entertainment value. So if you go to the movies, and I don't know how much movie tickets are anymore because I never go to the movies, but let's say you go to the movies and you spend $15 and you watch a movie that lasts 2.5 hours and you walk out, you have nothing. You have the memory of watching the movie. When you buy $50 worth of yarn and you knit a scarf, you have 50 hours of wonderful entertainment. And when you're done, you have a scarf.
Right, for life.
So it's all relative. It's all relative of what and they'll say, well, why would you spend $30 on a skein of sock yarn? I can buy socks for $2.50 because it's the joy of knitting them. It's the joy of knitting them and then putting it on your foot and having it fit and being wonderful and the fun.
It's so funny. Like I was knitting a sweater one time, And I was so concentrating on one technique that I totally messed up like the simplest thing in that. And I ended up knitting the entire day, and then I had to undo the whole thing. So I was complaining to a good friend of mine, and I said, Jax, like I just wasted my whole day knitting this thing, and now I have to undo it. And he said, well, I hear you spend the whole day knitting, so it's all good. You know?
Right, right. And so you just extended your dollar value. So let's say you spent 10 hours knitting and you have to rip out, and you're going to knit another 10 hours to get back where you were. You're having entertainment for half the price.
Exactly. I love that.
You know?
I'm gonna take this with me for, as a lesson of today's conversation.
Yes, yes.
Well, thank you so very much for being my guest today. I absolutely loved having you over. I feel very honored that you agreed to this interview. And I feel like I could, talk to you the whole day today.
Well, thank you for having me on here. I love this. And I'm going to do some changing and switching around on my Facebook group. And I'm going to put your channel I'm going to put you as a recommended channel. And in a couple of weeks, you're going to be on my channel.
Thank you.
Right?
I can't wait for that. I can't wait.
Yes,
That's
going to be fun. So I get to interview you.
I know. Now I have to think about what to say.
Yeah.
It's easier on this side than on the opposite side of being interviewed.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so very much.
Thank you.